December's halfway over, so now we're going to ask ourselves a really tough question. What's the best book that you read in 2024? I know for me, that's a tough question. Let's talk about it. So we started this channel in February of 2024, so that means D3 Reads isn't even a year old yet. But I'd like to take a minute as the year winds up to thank you, to thank all of you who have watched our channel at all, who's liked our videos, and especially those of you who have subscribed. You really have made this fun experience, and we're just grateful to be a part of a readers community. So thank you so much, and please continue to make those comments and let us know what you're reading. We've posted a number of videos over the last few months talking about the best of various genres: best fantasy, best sci-fi, best horror, and then we've looked at a couple of subgenres: best military sci-fi, best cosmic horror, best vampires. Over the past 10 months, I've got the opportunity to read some more current stuff, some more contemporary writers, as well as some classics that I had missed reading over the years. So the next couple of minutes, I want to share with you some of the best books that I've read that were published over the last 12 months or so, and then maybe a couple of honorable mentions, books that maybe weren't published in the last 12, 18 months, but they were new to me and I really enjoyed them and I want to share them with you. So with that, let's go ahead and start with fantasy. Now, we've published a couple of videos. Our very first video was Best Fantasy Authors, and we talked about the classics, The Lord of the Rings and Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian and those types of books. But there's lots more, obviously, that have come out since then. Just, matter of fact, our last video posted right before this one was dealing with the best fantasy books as determined by readers on Goodreads. A couple of months ago, my co-host Jeff and I got to do one of our rare face-to-face sit-down videos where we get to talk about one of our favorite authors in depth, Terry Pratchett and his Discworld novels. Now, between the two of us, we've read just about everything Sir Terry has ever written. I think there might be a couple of his early short stories, pre-Discworld short stories that I haven't read, but between the two of us, we've read everything that he's written about Discworld. And they're just absolutely phenomenal books. And like all fantasy fans, we were really saddened when Sir Terry passed away, and we really missed his Discworld novels because he was prolific, and those books came out regularly. And so we missed that. So that's why I was really thrilled earlier this year when I found out that artist Paul Kidby was going to publish his Designing Terry Pratchett's Discworld, which is this beautiful book where he describes in detail how he developed, where he got his inspiration for each of the covers that he did for Terry Pratchett's books, as well as some of his special works like The Last Hero, for instance. Everybody's in here, I think. I don't think I'm missing anyone in here, from The Luggage to Rincewind, of course, and Conan the Barbarian. And it's a fantastic book. It's touching because you get to see you get to look behind the curtain, as it were, at the relationship between Terry Pratchett and Paul and where they drew inspiration for their characters. Sometimes they weren't on the same page, but Paul always kind of adjusted his vision to more closely match Terry's vision of some of his characters. I think Captain Vimes, for instance, is one of the ones that changed a little bit over time. This isn't a fantasy book per se, but as far as the year 2024, this is the one that I think on the fantasy front I really, really enjoyed. And I found it very not only enjoyable, but touching, because it kind of gave us another connection to Sir Terry's work. Now, I also have kind of an honorable mention here for, as far as 2024 is concerned. I've read a number of fantasy books. And the one that stands out to me, and I mentioned this on my last video, so I'll just say this briefly. I am just thrilled reading The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I had never heard of it before. I stumbled across the title of it when I was looking at Goodreads top high fiction lists, and I saw it and I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And I am just really, really enjoying this. The fantasy world of Camor, the city of Camor, and the magic system and the characters. It's fun. Got the grittiness of Game of Thrones mixed in with some humor. It's a fun read. So if you haven't seen that book, I want you to check it out. It's really, really good. And it's the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series, which I am certainly going to continue in 2025. So for 2024, my best fantasy reads were Designing Terry Pratchett's Discworld by Paul Kidby and The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. Moving on to horror, I got to read a number of horror books. I got to revisit some classics I had read a few times in the past: Stephen King's Salem's Lot, Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. Got to read some really good short stories. The best newly published horror book that I read this year was another Stephen King book, which was You Like It Darker. You Like It Darker is a collection of short stories and novellas. There are some that are admittedly not terrifying, going to keep you up at night, but some of the stories in there have become some of my favorites of all time. He's got a little bit of cosmic horror in there, kind of attributes to H.P. Lovecraft's work. One of the stories is a sequel to Cujo after a fashion. There's just so much good stuff in that book. As far as horror goes, Stephen King really delivered in this collection of short stories. And I have been disappointed in some of his books in the past. Four Past Midnight, for example, was a collection of four novellas that I don't think I particularly cared for any of them. But Stephen King really delivered with this book. And so I was really happy with it. My honorable mentions for horror, as far as the best stuff that I read this year, were The Fisherman by John Langan and The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. Both of those books can be classified as cosmic horrors. Both of them are legitimately scary books, and both of them are just so beautifully written. They just draw you in, and they make you think, especially The Ballad of Black Tom. Black Tom has got some layered meanings in there, some moral to the story, if you will. Take a look at our Cosmic Horror Best Of video for a little bit more on that. And those two books, plus Stephen King's book, made 2024 a fantastic year for me reading horror. Moving on to science fiction. Now, I love science fiction, but I spent a lot of my time this year digging into my favorite subgenre, which is the military science fiction side. I did get to read some, reread actually, some classic H.G. Wells and some older science fiction like that. So I spent some time reading some of the classic or popular military science fiction series that I hadn't started for whatever reason over the years. Honor Harrington, the Lost Fleet series, for example. But as far as new science fiction, I didn't actually get to read a lot. Actually, I read one. But fortunately, it was a lot of fun, and I have no problem recommending it. It was Starter Villain by John Scalzi. If you're like me, your main exposure to John Scalzi was through the Old Man War series books. So this one, it was completely different. So the book is a lot of fun. The main character basically finds out he's a normal, everyday kind of guy, struggling to pay his bills, but he finds out that he is the heir, the only living heir of an uncle who turns out to have been a classic villain in the James Bond sense. And now he's inherited everything, which you would a volcano, secret fortress island, and all these gadgets and gizmos, as well as a network of henchmen and that kind of thing. And now he has to figure out what he's going to do with it. And of course, he's not the only villain out there, and he has to deal with these competitors who are wanting to take advantage of the demise of his uncle. So it's a lot of fun. It reflects some of the, it's of course nothing like Old Man's War, but it does you do get some of the sarcasm of the main character reflects, I think, what you would expect from Scalzi. This book is it's fun science fiction, and I definitely would recommend it. And finally, I want to talk about humor books. I did a video a couple of months ago that talked about these two books. The first is Swamp Story by Dave Barry. Now, I could go on and on about Dave Barry. I've read the guy's work since he was a journalist, humor writer for the Miami Herald, and then as well as I forget what state he is, South Carolina maybe. He's written for a couple of newspapers, but primarily the Miami Herald over the years. I've read almost all of his books. I think he's hilarious. If you're Gen X, you probably have read him, but if not, give him a shot. He's got a unique kind of humor, but a couple of years ago, he started stepping from his observational life observation type humor into novels. Big Trouble was his first novel, and that was turned into a movie starring Tim Allen. But then He's written a couple since then. I haven't read them all, I have to admit. His books were coming out when I was really busy in life, and so I let some pass. But I stopped that and was able to pick up Swamp Story shortly after it came out. Matter of fact, I got to see him at an author event and got a signed copy and all that kind of stuff. So super thrilled with it. Swamp Story is just, it's fun. For those of you who don't know him, he's lived most of his life in Florida, and he's recognizes the unique characters that can come out of that state. And so imagine Florida man just distilled into pure 100% Florida man concentrate. That's what this book is. It's everything that's crazy about Florida in one story. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of seemingly random things that kind of come together at the end to one satisfying conclusion. So great on the humor side, and I recommend anything by Dave Barry. Even if the ones I haven't read, I would recommend it because Dave is just incredibly funny and just insightful kind of humorist. So this next book, I'm not sure exactly where to categorize it. I came across James by Percival Everett when I was putting together the concept of a video talking about best humor books. And when I did, and I wanted to find some contemporary stuff, and so I typed in best humor books, and James pops up. And James is just, it's super interesting, right? The plot is, it takes the story of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, but it tells it from the perspective of Jim, the slave, who ran away with Huckleberry Finn and helped him to escape. So it changes the focus of the story to Jim, and that just sounded amazing. And so I thought, oh, that sounds like good. I was thinking in terms of the type of humor that you would get from Mark Twain. Now, remember, Mark Twain's story was supposed to bring some uncomfortable truths to the surface, especially when it came to things about slavery. And this happens in James too, but there's a lot of seriousness in James. And though some of it is, you could call dark humor, there's a lot of it that's just simply not funny, but it's still important and engaging. So though you would find Percival Everett's work, that this book James listed as, I've seen some reviews say it was darkly humorous. Maybe. You're not going to buy this book, or you're not going to read this book to laugh aloud. It's satire, I think, in its sharpest form, and it's an important work. I really enjoyed it. It makes me think, especially if you, what I did when I was reading this, I would read portions of Huckleberry Finn along with it to try to align the two stories to see how they kind of married up. And that was a unique experience too. If you have the time and you want to kind of think over some of the deeper, I think, currents of the story, give that a shot. But it is one of my favorite books of the year. James by Percival Everett, definitely worth your time. Again, I talk about it here at the end of the humor section, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable calling it a humor book. So that's it, guys. Those are my top picks for 2024. What's the best book that you read, or books that you've read in 2024? What were your favorites? It's not necessarily that they're published in 2024, just what left a lasting impression on you. Thanks so much for your time, guys, and see you again next time.